Hello sewing friends. For today's episode I'm going to talk about sewjo and sewing pressure and sew FOMO and all of those things connected with feeling the need to sew lots or losing the desire to sew. So I'm going to chat to you about that today. So let's get started. Sewing loss of sewjo, so the joy of sewing. Sewing FOMO, as in fear of missing out of sewing, and sewing pressure. I think they, for me, all group together because I think sometimes one can cause the other or one is a consequence of the other. So sewing sewjo, getting lost. I know that Kittenish Behaviour talked about this. She sews for her job, but she lost the desire to sew as well. And losing the desire to sew, my question is, have we over sewn to need a sewing break? Is it like any hobby where we need time away to want to go back? Is it that we've sewn something too hard and it puts us off? And I know my personal solution for that. So if you have reached a sewing sewjo loss, what can you do? I would love to hear your comments in the thoughts below, but here are my suggestions too, and we can start a conversation about it. So when I reach a lack of sewing motivation, the first thing I will do is go back to a tried and tested or a pattern that I really know I will get instant success and gratification from, or quick success. So sewing jersey for me brings a quick, successful, joyful moment. And that's really tricky because I don't want to always sew in my comfort zone, but pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone can then cause disappointment and also cause sort of a sense of flatness when something doesn't work out. And I had this the other week with, I'll pop a picture in here, of some self-dyed fabric. I was full of joy whilst dyeing the fabric and quite quickly got a little bit flat because the fabric wasn't dyeing how I expected it to based on previous experience. And so I over dyed a bit more and was mostly loving it, and then I washed it. So even though I'd ironed it to fix the colour in, a lot of it was quite a lot paler when I got it out of the washing machine. So I already felt a little bit flat, that the difference between the wet dyed fabric and the dried washed fabric wasn't great. So I thought I'd use it like a toile, which is the right thing to do. So of course, to do a toile, you need to do a new pattern. So I then did a new pattern and started to like it, and then I put it on and I was just like, meh. And that's how I felt about it. And I was like, what is it I don't love? So I put it away for a bit, got it back, tweaked it a bit, and I still feel meh about it. But I don't know whether the meh is about the fabric or about the pattern. And the whole idea is to try out the pattern on a bit of fabric that I don't love so much before I make it out of a fabric I like. So that's all got packed away for a bit. Sometimes I can lose my sewjo when I have a vision for what I'm trying to sew or sew replicate and then it doesn't turn out. But actually sometimes I've got round that by actually wearing the item. And this happened with a pair of gingham culottes I made last summer. When I put them on, they didn't look as great as the ones that I'd owned, that I'd bought from a shop, and I hoped they would. But actually this summer I've got them back out and worn them, and I love them for a different reason. I love them because they are super cool and perfect for when I'm working from home. So for me, helping me with my sewjo is understanding that not every piece of clothing I sew has to be up there, perfect, overjoyed. Not every piece of clothing I used to buy from a shop was most joyous piece of clothing from a shop. Some of it was more utilitarian, useful. And accepting that some of what I sew is utilitarian and useful is a way of helping me with my sewjo. The other thing is, when we sew a tricky thing and the vision doesn't always go to plan straight away, we can fall out of love with something. But I'm learning to accept and enjoy the journey, which stops me losing my sewjo so much, because there's less pressure on perfection. I now happily embrace unpicking most of the time. So that stops me being upset with that, because I'm proud of myself for doing it right, not doing it fast. But I do think sometimes our sewjo is just, you know what? We might have been sewing a lot because we was into it, and now we just need a break, so we miss it. So sometimes having a bit of sewjo is okay. Take a break away, maybe tidy, maybe organise. I got my sewjo back with a vigour recently when I sorted all my fabric. If you haven't seen it, go and watch my episode where I sort and organise my stash, because that brought a sewjo back in being able to see and touch and look at everything I'd made. So that is definitely a way to get yourself excited again, is to have a sort out and a think and a clear. But at the same time, sometimes I think just go with it. It's for a reason. I also think, and this takes me into the next one, bit of a perfect segue, sewjo can come from FOMO, or sewing pressure. Now, what do I mean by this? What I mean is, sometimes we can feel the pressure to sew a lot in a week, or achieve a lot in a week, or achieve great projects. And I know for me, before being a sewing vlogger and during being a sewing vlogger, this is something I've had to watch for with myself. I absolutely love this sewing community online, on Instagram and on YouTube. I view a lot of the people, even if they don't know that I watch, as my sewing friends. My other half, who is not into sewing, walks into a room now and recognises people on the TV and goes, "Oh, you love Liz." And so lots of the sewing community online have become part of my life through watching them and being inspired by them, and to the point where I've created my own sewing vlog by being inspired by them. But I have to check myself when I'm watching one of my sewing friends' episodes and they're saying, "And I've made this, and I've made this, and I'm going to make this, and I bought this, and I made this." Now, nobody is doing that to make anyone feel bad, and nobody is doing it to show off. And I know that, and I love what they show and share, but the way my brain works makes me look at it and say, "Oh, I didn't manage that much this week," or "Oh, I need to manage more next week," or "Oh, I haven't got that many plans." And I never thought I was a person who got troubled by comparison. And then I realised that I'm a little bit more competitive and comparison based than I thought I was. But it's really hard to explain, because it's not about the other person. I'm not trying to compete with any of them, yet it's like a personal expectation. I am not a sporty person. I have partaked in various sports in my life, some of which I've enjoyed, but I've always considered myself not to be a competitive person because I haven't liked sport. But actually, is this me being a little bit competitive, that I think I should do better? And then am I putting pressure on myself? And then am I making my hobby into a stressful thing? Now, I don't know if any of you feel that way too, and I would love to know if you do. And also what you do about it, because I don't want to stop watching my lovely sewing community online. I love it. I'm inspired and I have so much joy with this, and it has reawakened in me something that I was dabbling with for so long and not enjoying, and also going back to my sewing machine, having ignored it for a few years. And I'm so grateful for everybody to do with that. However, I must not feel like I'm on a sewing conveyor belt. And nobody out there is trying to make me feel that way. And I'm working on that because I know this is about me. And I just want to put this out there to see if this happens to you too. First of all, I remind myself it's about the journey, not the end game. Secondly, I check myself to make sure I am enjoying the process, not rushing to the end. Thirdly, I vary my projects between quick sews of things that I know I can do well and that I need in my wardrobe, and challenging projects, because then I keep a balance where I don't get frustrated. So I am working really hard on being as conscious a sewer as I am a clothes shopper. If you want to hear more about my thoughts on this, I talk about it in the Sewing Lies and Myths video, and I will keep mentioning it, and I have mentioned it before. I took a decision a long time ago to try not to buy fast fashion, and then I took a decision to try to only buy second hand a few years ago. It's 3 or 4 now, and since that point I sometimes buy new, and that's okay because it's progress, not perfection. But generally most of what I buy now is second hand through either second hand online sites or through charity shops, and now also sewn. But I don't want to be a fast fashion sewer, and by that what I mean is just buying endless fabric and sewing endless things that I can't or won't or don't wear. I might have been at the beginning because I was excited, but I'm slowing myself down. I'm really thinking about what I need in my wardrobe, what works with what, and what looks good on me. I'm still on my shopping ban, and this shopping ban is because I want to change my mindset. Not to never buy fabric again, not to be puritanical about this, but to make myself think. And I think that is part of what I'm doing to not feel sewing pressure. I would love to open my wardrobe and have a fully me-made wardrobe for every season, but I want to do that in a way that means that I have thought carefully about what's in there. So if you are like me and quite early on in your sewing journey, and you so far couldn't wear a whole me made May wardrobe, like some of the amazing sewers out there can wear a whole month of May of their own clothes, I will get there, but I'm going to take my time. So this thinking is bringing joy because it's removing pressure, not adding pressure on, because I don't want you to sit out there right now and think, oh my goodness, why is she making this so painful and difficult? And if it is, switch me off, don't listen. What I'm trying to do is help those of you like me who are feeling a bit of sewing pressure or are feeling a bit of lack of sewjo because you feel like you're missing out, or any of those things. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, and if you experience it or how you manage it if you do. But for me, my biggest tips for you, if you feel any of those things, are the journey, not the end. Vary between your sort of tried and tested quick wins that you know you need in your wardrobe versus tricky projects. When you sew something you love, perhaps sew it more than once so that you get a sense of joy from that experience. Go with the sewjo the lack of sewjo if it happens, because it might be what you need for a bit, and you can do some tidying, some organising, some planning while you're there. And also remember that this is about having what's now described as a slow hobby, and the joy is in the creation and the journey, not in finish, 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 finished. And that hopefully is helpful for you. I know those things have helped me with how I think about it, and also I've learned things about myself too. I hope you have a great week, sewing friends. It's lovely to see you.